It's the synth that everyone's been talking about, and with good reason. Serum 2 goes crazy deep. I've seen a lot of jokes going around, alright, cool, Serum 2, and what did I do? Very first thing is I FM from B, the classic basic move. But there's so much more going on under the hood here. I wanted to take you through a lot of the somewhat more secret features that involve a lot of the new things they added. So we're diving deep here, some Serum 2 secrets, let's jump on in. So I'm going to start off here with the modulator section. A lot of these settings we're going to be talking about are a little more under the hood, and they kind of add some really cool extended functionality to Serum. We're going to start off with the modulation section here and then work our way through each part of the synth. I wanted to start with the modulation section because they added one of the coolest new additions in Serum, the ability to click any sound source in here and drag it as a modulation to a destination. So let's say I turn on the sub. What I can do is just click and drag sub over to anything that I'd like to modulate with it. Like, for example, the level. And now the output of the sub is a modulation source for oscillator A. Let's turn the level down on subs so we're only hearing oscillator A and play around with the octave. Insanely cool. It does not stop there though. We can actually take the output of any of these and use them as modulators. I'll take the output of, let's just say the filter, and drag that over to the wavetable position. Turn this up. And we can also turn the amount of modulation down. Let's remove that and maybe try adding it to the phase. Now we're getting a cool kind of phase modulation on this oscillator. Without it, with it. Let's try one of the weird new filters in here like diffuser and see what we get out of that. It's kind of a cool, noisy, overdriven sort of sound. I'm going to go ahead and remove this one. And we'll go back to a simple basic shapes. We'll take the output of noise and use noise as a source to go through the wavetable. Now this is extremely fast. We can turn the pitch way down on it. And now we can see how much more slowly this is moving through the wavetable. Because essentially what we're doing is we're reading this noise back as like a random noise oscillator, but at a very low pitch. So now we're getting every single little waveform up and down in this signal. You add something that's a little more regular in there, like for example, one of these kick attacks. Try applying this to the coarse tuning. I really love this feature. It makes Serum a lot more like a modular synth, where you can just take the output of anything and plug it into the input of something else just to see what it does. So this, number one, coolest new feature. Something else that's really cool is the ability to right click and set this grid to display beats instead of time. So if we zoom out here, we can see we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 beats, and that's one measure, 2 measures, 3 measures, and 4 measures. We can zoom back in like this. Now we know for a fact that the tail of this sound lasts for 2 beats at the current tempo that I'm at, which is 120. You can see it lasted those last 2 little clicks there. This is really, really helpful if you want to have a sound that lasts exactly a certain amount of time, like that. And now if I turn the speed up, you can see the grid underneath moving along with it. So if we're at 184 and I still want a 4-beat envelope, I have to drag this in and make it shorter. You can also set this to BPM down here. And when you pair these two settings, now you can lock onto the grid any of these points of your envelope. Here's a really cool feature that I did not think that Serum had. Let's say, for example, here we've just got a filter being modulated by envelope 2. And I have my voicing set to mono and legato. Now, normally what happens is what you just heard, where the envelope will trigger on the very first key press down, and then for the successive notes, it does not trigger again. But if you right-click in the grid display, you'll get the option for Legato inverted. Now, what that means is that this envelope will trigger again when you press a note in a series of legato notes. If you're looking at my hands, you can see that I was holding down all of those notes. Let's just go ahead and put it in here so we can actually see this happening. Here's a few overlapping notes. Normal legato sounds like this, where legato inverted sounds like this. So you can still get that nice glide between the notes that are overlapping, but you'll also get the envelope opening up again, which is very handy in some situations. I'll right-click this envelope, remove all destinations, because now I want to move over to the LFOs. We're going to use this same patch here, showing the LFO opening up the cutoff. Some very simple patch like this. Just a constant wub. What we can do is right-click the rate knob and add swing. The swing is defined down here above the keyboard. Currently it's set to off. We can go ahead and set this to, let's do something very aggressive to start with. 83.5% swing. Now I'm going to play this and we probably won't hear anything. Right, I'm not really getting much of a change here because our swing division is set to 16th notes. But our rate is set to quarter notes. So let's set this to quarter notes. And now we get our swing from the LFO. There we go, we have swinging LFOs. Here's another really cool new feature that, again, starts to bridge the gap between hardware, modular synths, and Serum. If we set the rate of the LFO to Hertz mode, normally it goes up to 100 Hertz maximum, which is pretty fast. I mean, that is audio rate, right? 100 Hertz is audible. If we apply this LFO to the cutoff, which it already is, we get a sound that's like this. That's some pretty cool audio rate modulation of the filter. So we're basically FMing the filter. But if you right click this, you can actually hit this 10 times button and now it'll max out at 1000 Hertz, which gets you a much wider range to play with. Let's take this off of 10 times mode, put it back on BPM, and make a little more of an interesting LFO. I'm going to set this onto envelope mode, which means it'll just play through in a one shot every time I play a note. And then it'll just hold and pause. But one little thing you can actually do here is you can right click any of these points and set them as a loopback point. So even in envelope mode, we still get some looping going on. So let's just right click and choose set loopback point here. To remove it, just right click and choose remove loopback point. There's one really cool thing I wanted to show about the modulation that I've been using quite often, and that is that you can apply a custom modulation curve to anything that's being modulated. For example, I have a slow opening filter here. If I right click the cutoff, I can choose edit custom curve. That brings up this little window where we now have a straight line showing, which means that this modulated parameter will just follow whatever curve happens here. But we can actually come in here and curve this separately than other sounds. So let's just say we want to automate in the noise level as well. But I want the filter to open up more quickly than the noise. The noise will follow just what this LFO does, but the filter now has an upwards curve on it, which means it's going to open more quickly. They're being modulated from the same LFO. But you can hear how that noise lags behind. If we put it back the way it was, it would have sounded like this. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff in here. If you double click, you can create points. And now if I make weird points in here, it's going to start to get all wacky. You can also smooth this out too. If I turn the smooth up, then it's basically going to apply a smoothing rise and fall to the incoming modulation. So you can see how it's narrowing the range of modulation because it's smoothing out all these peaks here and making it not go quite as aggressively far. Let's move on to the oscillators. Now, there's a few things for each oscillator that I think are pretty tricky that are under the hood. If you right click up in this top bar where you have the pitches, you can set the mode to semitones where you can make adjustments in semitones here. But now you can also adjust it by the harmonic. This is very exciting to me. It's one of the ways that I make a lot of the basses that I use are through shifting harmonics. And then distorting them. And now that I can use any wavetable and also shift it by a harmonic, I get a much wider variety of tones I can use for this. We can also shift it by ratios. This is commonly used in FM synthesis, so we don't even necessarily have to do the FM from B thing anymore. What we can do is grab the oscillator, apply it to the coarse tuning, and change the ratio. And if you hold shift, you can get to non-harmonic ratios. So already right there, that expands this synth just enormously for at least my purposes. Probably a lot of people too. Now when you're in the sample mode, got a little bit of a finger style guitar-y kind of pluck. We can right click where it says the sample name and choose switch to wavetable. And now this is going to convert this sample into a wavetable for us. I'm not going to go into what all of these are here. I'm just going to pick one at random, see how it sounds. If I don't like that, I can click the little back button up here and try it again. Switch to wavetable, do frequency estimation this time. Yeah, much different result. Let's switch this back to a sample. And if you click scan, you can do a few things in here. You can increase the range of scan. Normally it maxes at 200, but you can actually bump this all the way up to 400 and 800%. You can also lock the scan rate to the tempo. So now you have the scan rate of this. And as I lower the tempo of my project, it actually changes the pitch of the sample because we're scanning through it quicker or more slowly. If you uncheck that, then you can now set the sample length to the BPM. You can say you want the sample to last for a bar. So let's get a metronome going here. Interesting, I'm noticing the scan rate is only lasting half the length that I'm giving it. So it's only lasting half a bar when it's set to 1 bar. I wonder if that's because I have this set to 200%. So I'm going to set this back to 100, and then I'm going to go and set the sample length to BPM. Now let's see if it actually lasts the full length of time. Nope. Interesting. I don't know why that's happening. Should be lasting twice as long, but either way, it's still locked to the BPM, so whatever. I guess I can do the math and times 2 it in my head or whatever I need to do. Moving on to the granulator. There's a lot of cool things we can do in here. Let's find a good sample for the granulator. Maybe go to the plucked. Yeah, this little glissando guitar sounds pretty cool. So same deal as before. If you right click in here, you can choose to lock the scan rate to the tempo or the sample length to the BPM, also change the rate. All of that is the same. You can also key track this as well. So when I play higher, it scans through faster. If I set this to forward loop and I adjust my loop length, if you notice, it's looping, but the grains are continuing on past the loop. That's what this is showing you here. Is like it's going to start somewhere in here, but the grain will continue playing onward. That's the little playhead. We can turn scan down and get a better idea of what's happening. But if you click in here and choose loop grains, then what's going to happen is the grains will now respect that loop barrier. It can give you a much more interesting effect sometimes. One of the nicest things is having this whole window here that you click this little blue grain size where you can make all kinds of adjustments to the amount and the random and the skew, but you don't actually need to open this window. If you hold down Option and drag around, then you can make these adjustments from this screen right here. So let's set this to more of a sharp kind of sawtooth and change the density. Here's another cool thing. We can right click and set the density to BPM sync. So I'm going to say we want a new grain every 8th note. And we're going to go ahead and turn the length down a bit. Let's say we go to a new grain every like 32nd note. Let's turn scan down so it's going more slowly too. And now if we drag this over here, we're going to get more of a smooth attack on it. And like many other parameters here, you can also BPM sync the length. So we're going to set the grain length to 32nd notes. So now we're going to have a density of, let's say, 16th notes with a length of 32nd notes. And all of this is nicely in time with our project. Moving on to the spectral oscillator here. Now, one of the coolest things I think you can do is to load a picture into the spectral oscillator. I got this picture of a cool cat wearing sunglasses, so I'm going to go ahead and throw this into the spectral oscillator. All I have to do is drag it and drop it, and check it out. There's our cool cat, kind of squashed a little bit sideways, and he sounds like this. Pretty weird. Now we have a few things we can do with this. We can filter it by dragging up and down on the side here. So this is basically a high pass filter and a low pass filter. And yes, you can apply modulation to this. Now this is a really hard cut, but what you can actually do is right click it and choose smooth. And now instead of it directly just lopping it off right where the filter is, it has a smoothing effect where it's basically going to get rid of the frequencies over time. If you right click scan and choose phase lock, then that's going to get you a different sound. This can give you a bit of a less smeared sound, as it's trying to stay a little more faithful to the original sample. So I grabbed some little breakbeat from my library and dragged this in here. We can right click and choose transients here, and this tries to preserve the transients that get really smeared by the FFT processing of the spectral oscillator. So you can hear we have more of the attack on the front edge. It's not perfect, but it's there. That does it for the oscillator section. Got a few more cool tricks to show you. One of them is with the filter. Let's switch this back over to a simple wavetable. Now in the filter, you can use this drive to add some saturation to a sound. We can hear it start to distort and add upper harmonics at higher levels. But if you right click it, you can actually choose clean mode, which will just provide a gain boost without actually adding saturation. Let's take a look at this through a spectrum. That way we can see the difference. So there it is on clean mode and with clean mode turned off. See how it's adding those upper harmonics right there? And you can do this over in the FX filter as well, like that. And now that we're in the effects section, let's talk about a few really cool little effect things here, and that'll wrap it up. Before I keep going here, I just want to say if you are liking this tutorial and you want to continue to up your music production game, head on over to EDMProd.com. There's a ton of free resources there, including the EDM Starter Kit, which is a massive pack of over 700 samples, everything from effects to drum loops, whatever you would possibly need. Go ahead and check the link down in the description. Let's get back at it. Starting off with the chorus, flanger, and phaser. All three of these have an option to add swing to their effect. You have to be on BPM mode for this to work, and if you right-click rate, you'll see this little swing option here. Now it's going to apply swing at whatever this rate is. So I set this to a rate of quarter notes. I've got it set so we can pretty audibly hear the chorusing effect. And now if I start to add some swing at a quarter note rate, you can hear it's got that little swinginess to it. Same deal with the flanger. We'll set the rate to quarter notes. And phaser normally sounds like this. Add some swing. Just more ways to lock everything with your project or make it weirder and wonkier. So one of the cool new devices they added in Serum 2 is the Convolver. Now it comes preloaded with a whole bunch of nice factory impulse responses, but you can actually add your own sounds in here. I've got a whole folder of impulse responses off to the side here. Let me just look for one that would be kind of cool. Here's a really weird long delay-like one. I don't know where I got any of these, to be honest. Probably Reddit. If I add this to my sound, make something that's a little pluckier, I think. And you can go in here and adjust the size and the tone of it as well to really mess around with this. Let's find something strange.
Hey.
Let's throw this in. Alright, let's move on to the other reverb in here. We have a pre-delay for this reverb, but you can actually right-click this pre-delay and set it to BPM mode. Now we can add like a quarter note of pre-delay, which is going to make it sound almost like a delay in some ways. If we add a shorter pre-delay, like a 16th note, tighten up the size. Converts this reverb into like a very dispersed sounding delay effect. The very last trick I want to show you is that Serum has the ability to export the last played note as a WAV file directly to your DAW simply by clicking and dragging. Got this pretty nasty bass sound going here. Now, if I really like that, what I can do is hover up here to the left of where it says Serum 2. This little wave export button will appear. I click and drag this into the DAW, and there's that thing I just played. Hope you found this useful. Go forth and make some crazy sounds in Serum.